team, and welcome. I'm your host, Carrie, creator of Mother Life, your destination for all things real talk and parenting. This is the IRL group chat, where we talk about the wild balancing act of pursuing careers and passions while also doing our best to show up for our kids. Join me every week as I sit down with some badass parents in my closet, and we talk about their careers, kids, and relationships, and all of the weird shit that comes up when you're trying to balance the seemingly impossible. Today on the pod, we have a certifiable rad dad, Chris Gayomali. New York Magazine has literally referred to him as a cool person. He's a writer and a journalist who keeps his finger on the pulse of sports, culture, fashion, and tech. When he's not writing cover stories for GQ or going deep into a niche corner of the health world for a story, he's juggling Muay Thai fighting, a daily wellness practice, authoring his popular Substack called Heavies, and parenting his toddler. This podcast is for all our city-dwelling parents out there, our playground poppies, our Manhattan mothers, and the nannies who run the show. Chris, let's start.
All right.
Welcome.
Let's do it.
I'm so happy you're
Yeah.
here. We have a lot to talk about because we don't know each other, which sometimes on these pods, I do really know the person, and so I can, get really uncomfortable really fast and ask really personal shit. I might do that anyway. We don't know.
Oh, please do. I'm ready. I'm an open book.
Excellent. But you're a creative soul. You're a dad. You're a New Yorker, or you live in New York now, which I'll call you a New Yorker because you're raising a kid there, which I feel like once you've done that, you have won the gold medal of existing in New York. I just always like to hear the career trajectory. Did you always know that you wanted to be a writer, a journalist? Did that happen to you accidentally?
Oh, no, it was a total accident. So, I moved to New York in 2008. It was, the world was crumbling. It was a, financial ruin for everyone. And I was working the most soul-sucking office job I've ever worked in, Irvine, California. I was, editing, what was it? It was insurance reports that were audited by doctors for insurance companies that determined whether someone was worthy of treatment or not. And it was just oh my God, people's lives are in my hands right now. A misplaced comma can totally change whether the determination of what kind of treatment they're going to get and whether they have to pay for it. And so after that, I quit that job, had a little bit of savings and moved to New York kind of without anything lined up. Had my first job interview at some recruiting agency. I totally forget what it was, but it was in Midtown. And I remember the woman just totally wrecked my resume. She was like, "What is this? What are you even why are you using all this flowery English major language to describe your typing speed or whatever?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm an idiot." And so I think after that I was totally morally kind of down, and wrote her a thank you card where I was like, "Hey, thanks for ripping me apart. I think I kind of needed that and kicking my butt." And I think that kept me top of mind because she pinned it to her desk and was like, "Hey, we actually have something that you might be good for. You should come in, interview for it. We'll see what happens." And it ended up being at the UN.
Oh, sure.
So
just
my
cash.
first job in New York was an assistant job at UNICEF actually. And so I was around immediately thrust into this role where I was around all these really worldly people who spoke 4 languages each and were all editors and worked on children's programs around the world basically. And here I was showing half of them how to use Facebook most of the time. That was basically the extent of my job. Did that for a little bit and then was maybe I want to try a publishing program or something like that, and applied for a publishing program at NYU where I had zero network or anything about what journalism actually was, and kind of tricked my way in from there. And then I had a friend who was interning at the Atlantic, and she kind of helped me sort of finesse my first public byline there, which was a totally embarrassing story that no one should Google ever. But it was that old parable of trading your paperclip up for a boat. I've basically been trading that single bad byline up for a paperclip. And now I think I'm kind of on a boat.
I think you're
And
on the boat, man.
yeah,
I think you have a
yeah,
boat. It could be considered a yacht by some, but well,
yeah. So then, from there, I kind of like tricked my way into tech journalism, a lot of blogging, that sort of thing at Time Magazine. Then I went to The Week, which is this like, British sort of like aggregation newspaper that succinctly like captured all the news and did that for a couple of years. Went to Fast Company and became a tech reporter, and then went and landed at GQ when an old someone I had interned for like commented on my Instagram. It was a picture of a bowl of rice and pork chop that I was eating alone in Chinatown one day, and it was like, "Yo, I might have a job here at GQ. You should we didn't have you even have DMs back then. This was like when Instagram was still brown colored
sure.
and not like bright orange and pink or whatever." And emailed him, got a job at GQ, and spent like 10 years there, basically. Nine
So,
years there. 9 years.
did you enjoy writing as a kid? Like, you clearly had something there from the beginning if you're like
Mm-hmm.
editing reports and then you get ripped a new one because like your resume is too literary. Clearly, this
Yeah,
is in some way like front of your mind, whether or not you realize it. Did you realize it? Like, was this something you enjoyed?
I did. I was big on like Zanga, did a lot of that and wrote so many embarrassing things that I probably shouldn't have and got made fun of by my friends, being like, why are you like posting stuff on Zanga and putting in your aim away message or whatever, And was kind of like always doing that. And actually like read a lot as a kid too, which was a little weird because I didn't grow up in a household where there were like books everywhere or whatever. I kind of just like kind of had to like where whenever like a book would come my way, then I would get into, and then I would read like 1,000 pages of Shogun or whatever like happened to be.
Sure.
And so, really loved reading, really loved writing, and so I never kind of envisioned a career path where it would be my main thing.
Yeah.
To be totally honest, I had no idea what I was going to do when I graduated college. I thought it was going to end up like a high school teacher or something.
What did
And
your parents, what did they do? What were
yeah,
your examples?
I'm Filipino, so my mom is a nurse, naturally. And then my dad also worked in a hospital. He worked in the laboratory, and like he's the guy who looks at the microscope at your blood and all that kind of stuff. So
Didn't like
they
necessarily understand where this like literary creative kid was coming from.
oh no, I don't think anyone did. It's so funny because no one else in my household really reads that much either. When I was a kid, like I have two younger brothers, they weren't big readers either. It was kind of just me, and I think it was just, I it's kind of amazing now. And now I think about after having a kid too, it's just like how much time you have, and especially like before smartphones, it was like, oh yeah, there was like all this time to fill. And I was kind of reading everything. Like my mom was a big subscriber to like Glamour. So I read a lot of Glamour, and we had like Time magazines in the house. And then at one point, like we got a couple of GQs in there, and I grew up sort of like reading those. And yeah, I don't know. Somehow ended up in magazines.
Yeah, for like a very long time. You kind of, in the world of magazines, you kind of made it as long as anybody's made it before magazines.
Yeah. Yeah, I started at GQ in 2015, and I sort of caught the last taste of like the golden age of magazines, because within 2 weeks of starting, they were like, "Hey Chris, do you have your passport?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I do. Oh, why? What's up?" And they were like, "We're gonna fly the whole staff out to Tulum to do a little like ideation retreat." And so
Those days are gone.
I know my first time getting to know all my coworkers who were all like 40-year-old dads who dressed impeccably at the time was like on a beach and getting sun, and everyone's like drinking margaritas, and they're like, "Who should we put on the cover? Obama?" And that was kind of like my first like, oh,
Crazy.
okay. I'm in sort of a new situation and feel very out of my depth, and then was kind of forced to acclimate and figure my way out there.
I feel like we have a lot in pop culture around, or at least when we were growing up, like the lifestyle that goes with working at a women's magazine. Like obviously we
Yes.
have Wears Prada, the fashion it girls are all vying for these like super competitive internships. I don't know if there's that much about like men's magazines, maybe
Yeah.
Playboy aside, like
Oh, totally.
what that was like. Like,
Yeah.
was it
I
super
think
competitive and stressful? Was the vibe very different? Like, I don't know. How did you experience it? And was it sort of different than what's been portrayed on the women's side?
it was interesting for me because I felt like it was one of the very first situations where I was surrounded by like predominantly white men in my career. And it's growing up on the West Coast, especially. I grew up in Long Beach, California. I was surrounded by It was very multicultural. Like, we had a lot of Southeast Asians, mostly Cambodians in town. So my friends were all like, pretty all over the place. And the white people were kind of the minority. And so here I was kind of in this waspy sort of Ivy League situation for the first time. But it actually wasn't that cutthroat because I feel like as men, we kind of just default to talking about sports whenever there's any discomfort.
Sure.
So we were just like, yo, hey, Linsanity's happening. Isn't that crazy? Like, look at the Knicks. They're fun for the first time. And so that kind of like did a lot to sort of mediate any sort of complications that would arise culturally there. And I thought it was interesting too because my only like sort of cultural touch point to GQ at that point was, I think Hannah in Girls actually like interned at GQ for one day or whatever, and I was like, oh, that's what the office is kind of like. There's snacks, and that was kind of all I.
Free snacks. Like, what else do you
Yeah,
want?
yeah.
Where in this sort of storyline do you meet your now wife?
Yeah, so we both went to UC Irvine. I'm a year ahead of her. I was like working as like a sort of RA person who like lived in the
An
dorms
older
my
man?
second year. Not very much. Yeah, I was kind of a baby still. We were in the same dorm for a year, became friends at the tail end of it, and then our friend groups just kind of like combined at some point. And so, we became close friends, and over the years, I moved out to New York in 2008, and she moved out a couple years later, and we were both dating other people in very serious relationships. And we sort of both had breakups at the same time and started hanging out, and we were just like, huh, this could work. Everything that's
You know all my shit.
disgusting. Yeah, exactly. You know like everything about me already, so we can kind of skip that step where, new horrors are unleashed on you like every week or whatever. So that was kind of a convenient way to overcome all of that.
And did you always know that you wanted to be a parent?
Uh, I think so. I kind of I don't think I had enough imagination to sort of picture a scenario where I didn't have like a nuclear family,
Right, because it's
honestly.
just like that was the convention.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I grew up, I had like a million cousins, so many aunts and uncles like who lived within like a 10-minute walking distance to where I grew up in Long Beach. So I was just always surrounded by people who had multiple kids and kind of like, you know, uh figured that I would end up a dad one day, and here we are.
And for you, what was sort of your role model? Like, how did your parents divide labor? How did they parent? What was
Mm-hmm.
sort of the through line? That was your example. Whether or not you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to adopt it yourself as a parent is a different
Yeah,
question. But what were you sort of looking at?
totally. What's funny? After we had our kid, my mom started really opening up to me about like what it was actually like to raise three boys. And she was like, "Oh, your dad didn't do shit. It was all me." Like,
Did
and I was like,
you?
"Wow, you guys did that
Well, I
well."
was gonna
Like,
say, like, was that surprising to hear from her? Or you're like, oh, I could kind of, that makes sense. Like, I didn't really see my dad doing that much.
yeah, exactly. It kind of like it was one of those things where it's like, oh, once it's uttered into the universe, it kind of just made everything else click into place.
Yeah.
I have a great dad. He, is taught me a lot. He's kind of a weird guy too, in that he is, his hobbies are like acupuncture and watching like Star Trek and like all this other stuff.
He's got
And so,
multitudes, he's got
you know,
layers.
yeah, exactly. And so I kind of had like you know, it's so cliche, but as a kid I was like, why aren't we playing catch or whatever? But I actually was like, oh, I actually don't like playing catch anyway as an adult. So I was like, I wasn't necessarily missing out on it,
Right.
I guess. Yeah.
Catch is overrated. And like
Oh, totally.
that ideal. And so your mom's kind of opened up. She was working when you were growing up. So
Yeah, she was working.
she's juggling three boys,
Three boys.
doing most of the like cooking and stuff.
Yeah, it was actually, now that I look back at it, we there wasn't a whole lot of cooking going on. It was like, let me just buy like a stack of like 99-cent Jack in the Box tacos after school, dump them on the table for the three of you, and you guys figure it out.
That sounds delicious, honestly.
Yeah, I
I could
know.
do that right now.
I have a deep affection for the Jack in the Box tacos, even though they're barely a taco.
I wouldn't think too much about it. Like
Yeah.
what's in
So,
it.
we kind of like we're on our own a lot after school, and it was actually kind of like, we kind of had a lot of agency as kids. We weren't like a super strict household about homework or about studying or, like we kind of commanded our own time which had, strengths and weaknesses. The weaknesses being we couldn't get into any of the top schools that we wanted to get into, but
It worked out.
I think, yeah, it worked out. My brothers are doing well too, and yeah, we are.
And before we get back to you and your wife having a kid, when you're sort of entering this career and professionalizing as a writer and as a journalist, are your parents like, all right, Chris, I guess that like go live your life? Or they're like, what the fuck are you doing? That's not a real job.
No, they were always really supportive. They didn't read very wide, like they weren't like New York Times subscribers or anything like that. But every time like I would get a byline or something posted on Facebook, they were like super proud and would like, it's like that little braggy thing they were able to do with their friends. It's like, oh, look, Chris is published in this thing you've never heard of. What's your kid doing? You know what I mean? And
Totally.
so I think they kind of like really like that, even though I was making, $40,000 a year
Sure.
or whatever it
Sure.
was back then. Yeah.
And the whole thing is giving sort of like SoCal chill vibes. Like it's giving very
Yeah.
Long Beach. The whole your setup is like very like I am relaxed and
Yeah.
pretty. Like my cortisol is extremely low right now, just like hearing about this childhood. Like it seems like
Yeah.
pretty Long Beach.
Yeah, very Long Beach, a lot of time was spent as soon as I could drive, like going surfing, and like, keeping it very, very chill, low resting heart rate. But it's weird, and I think it kind of comes across here in New York. It's a little bit of a, advantage for me, I think, in some ways, because I think it makes me a nice colleague, even
Mm,
though living here has sort of unlocked a sort of like cutthroat, really competitive side of me that I didn't know existed when I was at home.
sure.
And so, I think that's kind of what it advanced my career, the quiet sort of like, oh, I'm gonna like, really try to kill it right now or whatever, and do the best that I can, while on the outside, throwing up shakas and saying dude and all that kind of stuff.
You were sneak attacking everybody with your chill vibes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then, okay, so now we're fast forwarding. You and your wife are married. You've known each other for forever. At what point do you
Yeah.
decide, let's build the team?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Or did you not decide and it just kind of happened to you? That's also a
I don't
thing.
know if we ever like had like there was, I don't even remember like having like conscious like conversations about like whether to have a kid. I think we were just kind of like launched into trying.
Sure.
So we
Your
got like
son's not
married in
that
20.
old. How do you not remember, dude?
Yeah, I know.
It's not like you got a 15-year-old. How old is he?
Yeah,
Two? Three?
two. He's two. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But this was in the, peak, not peak, but like sort of tail end pandemic. So we got married in 2019, had our, first couple years as a married couple in 2020 and 2021. So we're just like
So
around each
romantic.
other. Time sort of distended and ceased to be real at that point.
Sure.
So that's probably why I don't remember anything. And then we started ending up trying really hard in 2021 because I think it was maybe boredom too, because we're like, yo, like,
Let's shake shit up.
what's going on? We're just like, zooming into our jobs every day and then closing our laptops at like 6 or 7 or whatever it is and being like, hey, you want to do that again tomorrow? So uh started trying in earnest. And it was funny because it was like, we kind of had a hard time. We were in our the other side of 35 at this point. And so,
Geriatric.
yeah, conception was like more challenging than, we sort of thought it was going to be, and the joke was, always just like you're a teenager and you're like hooking up and
Yeah.
stuff and you're just like, you could get pregnant so easily and then as soon as you're 35 you have to like have a schedule and like, check your levels and
The
do all this.
moon
I was
has to
doing
like be in the right place. Like everybody's chakras have to be aligned. It's like
I know it
fucking
was
thing.
crazy. And so I was doing like crazy shit. I was like, oh man, maybe years of wearing like super hipster skinny jeans actually like were really bad for like my sperm count or
Yeah. Your
something. So I
sperm
was like trying.
motility is just
I know. I was like, do they have like three tails or something? Are they like swimming in like only counterclockwise or whatever? So I was like doing all this crazy shit where I was like, yo, let me like I was like Google like just on Reddit threads. It was like, oh, icing your balls might help like increase your testosterone. So I was like devoting some time to like icing my balls every day and like trying to make it happen.
that's
But the
love, man.
thing I know it was wild, dude. But then what really changed it for us? She we started I totally forget what the device is called, but she started using this device that like really gave you accurate measurements about your cycle and when
Like
you're
an app
actually like
or
ovulating.
like the strips.
I forget, no, not the strips. It's like a thing you literally
Like a
insert
wearable.
into your downstairs, yeah, and then it like feeds it into the
Into
app
your
and tells you when you're.
downstairs. I love
I
it.
know she swears by it though, and like has told a million friends about it. And after we started using that and getting like an accurate read of the cycle, like it was like it happened pretty quickly.
Okay,
And
you
so,
guys will find out what this mystery device is and put it in the episode notes for anybody who's curious. I just did an
I
article recently on how to get pregnant because so many people
yes,
get to our age and then they're like,
mhm,
oh, wait, what am I supposed to do? Because, like, to your point, like, we've spent so much
yeah.
time trying to not get pregnant. It's like,
Oh, I know. You get so good at it,
yeah,
at not getting pregnant,
yeah,
that it just it's hard to unlearn.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll find out what that is and send it
The
to you.
mystery
It was a
downstairs
game changer
device.
for us. Yeah, it was a game changer.
And then, so your little dude arrives 2 years ago. And at
Yeah.
the time, you're both working full time.
Yeah, we're both working full time. She's an urban planner, so she had a very intense job. She was working for the city at DOT. They were in the midst of like, trying to figure out how to save all the restaurants and doing a lot of the curbside
Interesting.
dining kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so here she was like marshaling large armies of inspectors and people to be like, hey, we gotta like we're building this thing on the fly and was doing that every day. And here I was like, doing my little stories. Like, it
Yeah.
was like it couldn't have been more like our jobs couldn't have been more like readily divergent during that time. How stressful they were.
So then in the middle of that period, she gets pregnant. You are at this
Hmm.
point you're allowed to come with her to her doctor's appointments.
Yeah, we were masking up and everything, and I just the device, it's called the keg. That's what it
The
is.
keg. You know,
The
I
keg.
I consider myself like pretty plugged into the whole vagina scene. Never heard of it. I
Yeah.
can't wait to look it up after this.
Black belt in vagina.
I am
Yeah.
like a fucking ninja when it comes to vagina. You want to talk about discharge? I know about
Yeah.
it. But this is a new one for
What
me,
what
so
was what was really interesting about it was like her readings from the keg were totally different than like anything that like the strips or whatever were giving her. It was actually like conflicting information.
ooh,
And so this was so accurate and dialed in to a degree that we were just like, yo, we were doing everything wrong. It
wow.
was pretty wild.
And also, like, it sounds like you were a real teammate in the process of getting pregnant. Like, it wasn't like, all right, Chris, like, let's fuck. And you were like, okay, I'm in. Like, you were involved in sort of,
Yeah.
you're icing your balls, you're reading about the keg in the data. Like,
Yeah, doing jumping jacks, getting ready, stretching, you
would you
name it.
say that's indicative of, has that kind of carried over into the parenting piece as well, in terms of just like
Yeah.
engagement and thinking, not just sort of being a participant, but sort of being involved in sort of the, if you want to call it, the strategy of parenting.
Oh, totally. And what's interesting is, I'm a millennial, and so, I talk to my friends I grew up with who are also parents, and especially in big cities, and um, we kind of one thing we kind of realized is like we didn't have a lot of templates for how to be a very present and active dad in that role. Like,
Totally.
me and a couple friends, it's like, oh, we do the majority of the cooking in our house, and a lot of like the grocery shopping and stuff like that. So we're kind of figuring out the roles in real time in a little bit, and it's interesting because it was like, oh, our dads had it so easy. They were just like
Yeah.
chilling and watching Geordie LaForge and all this kind of stuff.
Do you feel like have you guys identified any of your sort of tension points that you still rub up against? Because I talk about this a lot, like with my husband and other people, like
Hmm.
because there aren't a lot of examples, certainly not in popular culture, of involved dads for us to sort of see when we were growing up. Dads of this generation now are like, we want to do better than our dads did, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, women of this generation, a lot of whom were raised by feminists, just created this narrative for their girls around everything should be 50-50. And like
Right.
the future is female. And so you have women expecting 50%. And I think there's an expectation, and I'm slightly talking out of turn, but it's a hypothesis that men are like,
Yeah.
if I do 25% better than my dad,
Yeah.
that's huge. But 25% better than like zero gets you to 25%, not to the
I know.
50% that your partner's
Yeah.
expecting. And then there can still be like that frustration and tension. Have you ever wondered, wow, I would love for this podcaster to sell me something already? Well, you're in luck. Today I'm selling you on something highly exclusive, highly niche, highly mother. Just kidding, we're in the early stages over here, but if you've got a company or a cause you'd like to promote on the pod, get in touch. We're a good time.
Totally. And you know what sort of helped us, like it was a lot of figuring it out in real time, but actually we sort of realized maybe a year and a half in that, sort of the 50-50 thing is like just total myth.
Yeah.
It's gonna always fluctuate. Sometimes it'll be 60-40, 70-30, and seesaw every which way depending on how busy the other person is. And so, we've just been trying to be good and communicative about what we need at any given point. Like, if she gets a raise at work or something and like, is gonna be working longer hours, like I'm totally down to like do more of the, pick up and relieving our nanny and getting him ready for and stuff like that. So, just understanding that it's always going to be changing and it's never going to be totally fair. And honestly, not carrying the baby for 9 months or whatever is just like kind of like automatically makes that not the case. So,
Right.
just trying to do our best, and it's never going to be totally fair. And I think understanding that gives us some more empathetic like view of the other
Yeah. Okay, feminist king, go off. Do you hear this,
person.
everybody? Send this episode to
I
your
mean, I could be a
husband.
total piece of shit too, like
Yeah,
whatever,
I'm
like
gonna cross reference. No, just kidding.
she's gonna be like, Chris doesn't do shit. What the fuck's he talking about?
You come
Like,
with credentials, okay? You've come with a reference and a recommendation from a person who's
yeah,
pushed a baby out. So she thinks Sam thinks you're all right.
yeah,
Um, Now for your own kid, we've talked about before this when we were chatting, we've talked about what it's like to raise a kid in New York.
yeah,
We left when our son was 1 and we moved to
yeah,
LA, and like overnight basic shit was so much easier.
yeah,
Going to the grocery store, like
yeah,
just like basic, like the weather's shitty, doesn't happen that often, but like you put the kid in the
yeah,
car to go to daycare or whatever it is.
yeah.
Are there
Those
moments in
Trader Joe's lines in LA are so much better.
what
They're
lines?
non-existent actually.
What
Yeah.
lines? There are no lines, at least here in the Valley. So for you, are there moments in your day where you just look around and you're like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, this is so hard.
No, I kind of feel really guilty because we don't really ever experience that. Like, dude, we're kind of like really privileged, I guess. Like, wonderful nanny, she's playing with him right now. His best friend basically
Sweet.
speaks to him mostly in Spanish. Which is really funny because it's been like, it's been hot as shit here, like these last like this all summer basically. And our kid was like fairly recently after his afternoon nap, she was like, come on, let's go outside and play. And then out of nowhere, he goes, no, 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 mucho sol. And we were just this kid who looks Chinese is speaking better Spanish than everyone else at the playground, and we find that
Incredible.
really funny. Yeah.
Nothing more
So
New
we,
York than that, honestly.
oh, I know, and I feel like we kind of, I think maybe our like special abilities were like really good at in sort of embracing absurdity and all like, the stuff that comes with it. But we're also kind of boring people who are like really at our best and most at ease when we're locked into a routine and we don't deviate that much. So it's not like, we're in New York, but it's not like I'm going out like 3 nights a week or whatever to like get drinks with friends or something, it's
But
kind
how
of
are you
like,
getting groceries home to your house?
oh, we actually
Like, do you have a grandma cart? Like, what's the situation?
we kind of like have you what is it? It's like this uh the 3-3-2 rule or whatever when you go grocery shopping. Have you heard of this?
No, but can't
It's
wait.
like yeah, it's like you pick up your 3 proteins, your 3 produce, and then your like 2 fun things or whatever on like whatever snacks or like chips or some shit like that. You know what I mean? And then like we just kind of do 2 bags max, bring that home once a week, and then supplement all of that with frequent trips to the bodega to get berries because we run out of berries like so fast.
Yeah, how's your berry mortgage looking?
Oh, someone helped like $10,000 a week on berries. I don't know. It's pretty absurd.
Yeah,
Uh,
you gotta get that kid into bananas, because let me tell you,
oh
they are fucking economical, calorie dense,
yeah,
less
yeah.
messy.
He cycles through fruit, depending. So, right now he's in a little cuties phase. So he calls them oranges still because we can't explain that, a cutie is actually just like a small whatever thing. But yeah, so he's in that phase. So that'll last like 2 days, and then we'll have to switch it up to something else.
I'm very impressed with this. By the way, that rule only exists because you live in New York. Because, like, you
Exactly.
don't have, but I mean, I should try it here and see what happens. But, like, you don't have the car to just, like, make a shit ton of mistakes.
Oh yeah,
You
I
know,
know.
like, oh,
Yeah, like
here's the 5,000 pound bag of rice that I didn't know I needed. Because, like, you don't have the room to store, like, a 10-pound bag of rice.
oh, we actually do. We have during the pandemic I shipped a really old car out here from my parents' house that was like going unused in the backyard. And so sometimes our Sunday activity, like let's make the long drive out to Long Island for like 50 minutes to hit up the 99 Ranch there and do like a big grocery haul, and then, sometimes that's our cheat code to like get our big bag of rice every 2 months or whatever.
Okay. You guys, like, you've really got it figured out. I feel like, Chris, you're kind of confusing because I was laughing. I was, reading about, some of your accomplishments, and I think New York Magazine called you a cool person,
Yeah.
like, really, so, like, you're this cool dude, you're into, like, fashion,
hmm
you know a lot about sports, you also, like, are super into wellness and fitness. And like now I'm
Yeah.
starting to wonder if you like fuck with an Excel spreadsheet too. Like
Oh no,
you
no.
guys seem organized over there.
No, actually, I'm a very disorganized person. I don't have like Excel
I
sheets or
don't know if
like
I believe that. I'm not sure
planners.
if I believe it.
My daily planner is literally my notes app, and it says to-do list, and my number one thing right now on it is fridge thing, and then
It
two
says fridge
deadlines
thing.
for stories. Yeah, fridge thing. I don't know what it is, but we gotta figure it out.
Okay, and then what's the second thing?
Just some deadlines for stories I have to write freelance or whatever that I have coming up. And that's the extent of my organization. I think my keep things simple enough that it's kind of like, oh, when you realize you need something and something's amiss, you kind of are able to like really tackle it really quickly. And it's just going to the bodega, honestly.
Don't ever move to a house, Chris.
Yeah.
That's my advice to you. Just don't ever do.
The weird thing is whenever we visit home pretty frequently, and my cousins, some friends too, like they have like huge houses in like Orange County or whatever, and then I'm just like, oh my gosh, you're like every time I come back I feel like there's like a new garage full of stuff, and I'm just like, wow, this stuff is
Stressful.
crazy because I feel like our problem is we're like, we can't throw stuff away quickly enough, I
Right.
guess. That's our problem here.
I think that's kind of everybody. I mean, we have found that to be quite stressful actually from moving from an
Yeah.
apartment to a house is just like
Yeah.
not accumulating stuff.
Yeah, like I don't know, like it's like yeah, I the thought of having like more than like a rotation of like seven favorite toys at any given time, like really like how do people do it?
Yeah,
So
my
weird.
kid, the first one had like 7 toys, and this one just looks like toys barfed everywhere. It's a totally, and he's like
M-
fine, the first one. This one,
Yeah.
I don't know
My
what.
favorite thing is like you get all these like cool toys or whatever, and then it's like his favorite thing for a day is just like the box, the Amazon box
Oh
that
yeah.
that came in, and he'll just play with that
Or like a
for
top of a
forever.
yogurt container or something.
Oh
Man,
yeah.
that is that is fire. The top of the yogurt container.
Yeah, and it's really funny. Like we have friends here who are a little bit older than us, like who are raising kid, like have one kid or whatever, and the kid is just so sort of in tune with their feelings and very, steadfast in what they believe in and are like making ceramics and stuff and they're like 9 and it's just like, yo, your kid like the kids out here are crazy.
I was actually
And
going
it's
to
like
ask
those
you about that because there's like a stereotype about New York City, particularly city kids, of being like sophisticated, independent, well rounded. Like you see
yeah.
10-year-olds riding the fucking subway by themselves. It is a very different type of existence and agency
Hmm.
than in suburbia. Even though you lived a very independent existence as a kid, it feels like a
Yeah.
mature independence in New York.
Yeah, and my fear is that like, that manifests in like a drug addiction by the time you're 14 or whatever, just
Right.
because you're like on an accelerated timeline or something like that. But yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. Last year we went on a cruise with like my family like to Alaska with our kid. And it was our first time like doing like a big cross country big thing and being really out of our routine. And they have the big sort of buffet there for all the meals. And we're like, okay, like I guess we'll feed him the cruise pizza, the cruise ship pizza or whatever. And we put it in front of him and we're like, just it's just like cheese and like, bread or whatever. Like what can go wrong? And this kid was like 1.5 at the time, like literally just like turned his nose up at it and refused to eat it. And we're like, dude, we got like such a little snob already.
Yeah.
He's like, you
Incredible.
call this pizza? And we had to figure out what he would actually eat, and which was interesting.
Like
On
fucking
a cruise
sashimi or
trapped in the middle of the
something.
ocean. Yeah, right.
It's incredible. So, in terms of your son's social life and life in New York, he has a
Yeah,
nanny. I was always so fascinated by nanny culture when we were in New
yeah.
York. I mean, there's nanny culture here, but it is different because the way nannies in New York like run the show
Oh yeah,
and the way your kids have a social life outside of you is pretty wild. Like,
yeah.
what is, how does your nanny spending their days with your kid, and what sorts of conversations are you like giving her or him ideas about what you want them to do, or is
Hmm.
she just he or she just like, I've got this, don't tell me what to
Oh,
do?
she runs the show. She's like the Illuminati mob boss of the nanny circle. And so our kid, we live pretty close to a park that has like a rec center, and every time we take him like to the playground on the weekends and pass by the rec center, he's like a little celebrity. Like the employees will come out and be like, "It's Arden" or whatever and say hi, and it's kind of a trip. And there's some libraries nearby too, so they all just like it's like the nannies all just like go to hang out with their friends and the kids all play with each other and it's really cute. So yeah, he has a whole wild social life outside of us and
What
we'll
happens
get
when the
invited to
birthday parties hit on the weekend? Like, are you
oh
going to
yeah,
birthday
the birthday
parties of
parties are
strangers?
pretty crazy. Yeah, his friends like I feel like everyone is it's like that perennial New York thing where everyone is richer than you
Sure.
and we're just like constantly going to parties where it's like, oh, you own this whole brownstone. I get it now. This is a different level of, of wealth. It's like, maybe when he's a little older, he'll be self-conscious about his mom and dad's meager situation or whatever, but for now it's cool.
Regardless, it's going to make him a more interesting kid for sure.
Oh yeah, hopefully, like I always think I don't know if you guys do this, but we're always like, what is the trauma we're gonna impart on these kids? Like that's gonna like kind of
100%.
shape them in a real way. Um, and for us, it's probably gonna be like he's gonna be like, yo, my mom and dad kind of wanted me to be gay or something. I don't know what it actually is gonna be, but we're like it's probably gonna be along those lines or something.
Like obviously I think about and talk about that a lot with my husband, my friends, and it's always the really unexpected stuff I think that gets us.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously, yeah, if you're in a situation where there's like horrific abuse, like that's
Yes.
obvious. But like
Mm-hmm.
if you're within the standard deviation of parenting, the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that your kids remember and like really gets to them, you will never be able to anticipate. You're
Totally.
gonna fuck up your kids no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever your current like preoccupation is, just like let it wash over you because it's probably not
Yeah.
going to be the thing that fucks with them,
Oh,
Like,
totally. Yeah, 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 yeah. I've been like extra cognizant about like, maybe I shouldn't joke to him that like one of his like stuffed animals is haunted or something because maybe it'll like really wreck it,
right.
but
Yeah, and like you just but like if you have a different kind of kid, like he will think that's hilarious and it'll foster some
yeah.
sense of comedy and he'll end up,
Mm-hmm.
like you just there's because at the end of the day, like yes, they are vessels for the shit we put in there, but also
Yes.
like there's some shit already in the pot, right? Like there's some
Yeah,
stuff in
yes.
there that it's mixing with in one way or another.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have no idea where this is all gonna go, but we're just hoping his phase where he sort of hates us is kind of minimal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about that a lot as well. Is like I want independent kids, but I do want them to like talk to me and my husband and like respect us enough and know that we love them enough that like if there is something they're struggling with, they talk to us about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's kind of the gold standard dream, really, because we can't avoid. I remind myself of this all the time. Like we can't avoid them being sad or angry or upset. We can
Mm-hmm.
only help them to be resilient and work through it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, just
yeah,
give them all the right tools, hopefully. And it's so funny because I don't know about it, LA, but at the playground especially, we see a lot of very gentle parenting, and we're just like, how do
gentle
you
or
guys have time for
permissive,
this?
Chris?
Very gentle, where it's the kids calling the shots at that point,
I
and
would
we're
call
kind of
that
just like, yo,
permissive. I would call that permissive parenting. I think
mm,
actually I have something on this in the works, but this idea that like
mm-hmm,
gentle parenting is just like a really bad marketing
yeah,
play. Like it should be called boundaried parenting because if you're doing it
yeah,
right, you're just choosing your battles. But the permissive parenting is what our entire generation thinks they're supposed to be doing, which is just,
right, right, right.
let being walked all over.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so funny? It's like we get half of our like parenting advice, like it's like just like whatever we're scrolling through on Instagram or whatever. We don't know if it's gonna work. Like we'll try it sometimes and like maybe it'll be healthy or whatever, but you know, we don't know this person's real qualifications or whatever on this mommy page. We're just kind of like going with it and hoping that it's it makes if it makes any sort of logical sense to us, we'll give it a shot and then see how that does, I guess.
Yeah, if it's like put onions in their socks because they have a cold, like, maybe ask
Yeah.
yourself a question. That's something that's come up on my feed. But if it's like, say your kid's feelings back to them, it's like, okay, well, that can't really hurt.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that seems right. I wish I could see a situation where I would have like benefited from having someone do that to me.
I would
And I
still
think that's what a
benefit
lot of
from
it.
that, Chris. Like sometimes I don't
I
know my own mind. I would love it if
I
somebody's
hear
like,
you.
you're feeling really tired right now, actually, or like, I think you need a snack and you'll be good.
Yeah.
I would
That's
benefit
the
from that.
daily decision tree. Are you hangry?
So the
Yeah.
last topic that I want to talk about
Mm-hmm.
in this chat is your sort of wellness journey. You have made something that is something that you obviously care about deeply, like a big part of what you're working on currently with heavies and your
Yeah.
Substack.
Mhm.
How did that sort of trajectory come to place? And
Mhm.
B, how do you fit that in and parent? I find that second part very hard.
Yeah, yeah. So For me, I kind of had a health scare before, right, a couple years before the pandemic, where I got this bunk blood test back from my doctor that basically told me, hey, you might have leukemia, and the chronology of the situation made it so when I went back into the get a blood test, I wasn't gonna get like new results back until the end of like a long weekend. And so I spent like just a couple days like, stewing and kind of pondering my own mortality and thinking I was gonna die. And it ended up being a total fluke, but it kind of like really imprinted on me like, oh, you should probably like be a little bit more intentional about your health now that you're in your mid 30s or whatever. And so, a couple of other things happened. I got really into Muay Thai, which is a kickboxing from Thailand. And I had a homegirl. Her name is Alma. She's like my coach to this day. She was, a cool party girl, and like sort of like fell into this thing where she became a really serious fighter and was traveling all over the world and like, beating people up and got really fit. And she also had a kid around the same time as us, so our kids are like BFFs at this point. Um, and so I just, I feel like a lot of the health and wellness stuff about there is really scammy and snake oil and like sort of disaggregated from like a holistic view of what healthy living can be like. And so when I started my Substack heavies, I was like, I wanted it to be really practical and stuff that like people can like understand and kind of fun and winking. And I just saw like this wide open lane, and it seems like it's resonating with people because it's the goal with it is like not how to get a six pack. It's to like you should like be strong enough to like lift your kid up when like they hit like the 32-pound mark or what,
Yeah.
without throwing out your back. It's kind of where a lot of that stuff comes from. So. Um, and I think in terms of like, going to the gym, actually I was joking to someone yesterday, like, oh, now that I'm like writing this Substack, it's kind of like a really good incentive to go to the gym because I have to keep up
There's
appearances and actually
accountability.
like eat healthy. Yeah, there's accountability built into it. I've been pretty intentional about like, building my freelance work around going to the gym. So I just go like every weekday at like and make it a point to miss it, even if I'm feeling like pretty crappy or something like that. So far so good, I guess.
Is that
We'll see
something
what
that you and your
happens.
wife share?
She's actually it sucks because like she's one of those people who will like um eat a salad for lunch and then all of a sudden there's like some abs there or whatever. Like I'm like working out 6 days a week and like trying to like stay in really good shape and just scratching the surface of what you can do. So yeah, we don't share that. It's where we differ, but she's very supportive. And like whenever she like dives into like physical health stuff or whatever, like I'm trying to be encouraging with it too. We're really into collagen right now. You know,
Tell me more.
little
We're
scoop.
drinking it, we're eating it. What are we doing?
Yeah, a little scoop of collagen powder in your morning coffee. Great. I started doing it because my family has a history of like bad joints and stuff like that. So I was really cognizant about that. But she was like, after 2 weeks, she was like, "Hey, your skin is kind of amazing. Like you had some wrinkles disappear," and so she's like on the collagen kick too. And
I might be too
yeah,
after
get
this.
yeah, get some collagen, put in your coffee. Game changer.
Well, it's funny that you mention it because I noticed it being sold at Trader Joe's.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Trader Joe's
yeah,
is
yeah.
what's it called? Like hydrolyzed collagen or something?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
In
yeah.
like a
I haven't seen it.
bucket at Trader Joe's. And I was just like, okay, collagen's mainstream now.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It totally is. Big fan. Game changer.
And with your son, are there things like I feel like he's starting to be the age where you're like where people start to say, "Oh, should I have him in activities? Should I be doing stuff
Hmm.
with him?"
Yeah,
I want him to have this sort of athletic ability or give him the
yeah.
opportunity. Do you feel any of that sort of pressure or interest coming from him or coming from you guys?
No. Whenever he expresses interest or something in something, we kind of like are down to like kind of like figure out what the next step is. Like recently he uh we found like a little basketball hoop on like someone else's stoop and brought it home. And then he caught some Olympic basketball, and I was like, oh, basketball. So, we kind of like got his little setup, and I'm trying to teach him how to like shoot like a
Cute.
little bit, so, but not really feeling huge pressure yet. Like he's not one of those kids who's like, crawling on things and like jumping off and trying to do backflips or whatever. Like he's kind of a more I'll play in the corner with my little trains quietly while all the other kids are running around sort of kids.
That's my
So,
kid
we
too.
haven't felt yeah, we haven't really felt the pressure to like sort of impose any sort of like athletic things on him just yet. But there's some interest building. We'll see where it takes us.
We'll see. Well, I can't wait to see if end up with a certified cool kid because you're a certified cool person. But I feel
Oh.
like I have such a picture of what you and your family's life is like in New York, and it's somehow calm, and the Long Beach vibe has somehow been brought to like chaotic New York, and there seems
Yeah.
to be a bit of a special sauce there. So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to hopefully revisiting in a year or two and hearing how things are going. But hopefully people check out Heavies, and I'm looking forward to keeping in touch and hearing what's next.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. It's like a bunch of like shit I never get to really talk about. Maybe like when we're puttering around on the playground with other dads or whatever, it's so like surface level about
Right.
what we actually talk about. So this was
Yeah.
really cool to think about like actually like parenting and how everything fits together.
Well, I'm so glad you did it with me, so I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. This was fun.
This is fun. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in next week for another chat in the closet. In the meantime, follow along on Instagram at mother.life for our regular recipes, rants, and riots. And check out our website, www.mother.life. This podcast was produced by Mother Life, music by Ronan Liv.